Lieutenant Sarah Chun stood at the edge of the flight line at Nellis Air Force Base, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, and the gleaming F-22 Raptor before her seemed to shimmer in the Nevada heat. She had dreamed of this moment for 15 years, ever since she was a scared 8-year-old girl watching fighter jets streak across the sky above her foster home, promising herself that one day she would be up there too, untouchable and free. The path to this moment had been anything but smooth. Sarah's childhood was marked by a series of foster homes, each one bringing its own set of challenges and disappointments. Her biological parents had died in a car accident when she was just 3 years old, leaving her in the care of an overwhelmed social services system that struggled to find permanent placement for a quiet Asian girl who rarely spoke and seemed to carry the weight of the world on her small shoulders. The first foster family, the Johnsons, had been kind but unprepared for the complexities of caring for a traumatized child. Sarah would spend hours sitting by the window, watching planes fly overhead, creating elaborate stories about the pilots who controlled those magnificent machines. She imagined they were warriors of the sky, protectors who could see everything from their lofty perch and keep the world safe from harm. In her young mind, being a pilot meant never being powerless again. When Sarah was 6, she was moved to her second foster home with the Martinez family. Mrs. Martinez was a stern woman who ran a tight household with 3 other foster children and 2 biological sons. The house was chaotic, filled with the constant noise of children competing for attention and resources. Sarah learned to make herself invisible, to slip through the cracks, and avoid drawing attention that might result in punishment or, worse, another move to another unfamiliar place. It was in the Martinez house that Sarah first encountered real violence. Carlos Martinez, the oldest biological son, was 17 and angry at the world. He saw the foster children as invaders in his territory, competing for his mother's attention and his family's resources. Sarah, being the smallest and quietest, became his favorite target. The abuse started small. Hidden pinches, whispered threats, stolen food from her plate when no one was looking. But as months passed, Carlos became bolder and more cruel. The incident that would change Sarah's life forever happened on a cold Tuesday evening in November. Mrs. Martinez had gone to the grocery store, leaving Carlos in charge of the younger children. The other kids were watching television in the living room, but Sarah had retreated to the small bedroom she shared with 2 other girls, trying to complete her homework by the dim light of a single lamp. Carlos appeared in the doorway, his presence immediately making the small room feel even smaller. Sarah looked up from her math problems, her instincts screaming danger even before he spoke. He closed the door behind him and approached her slowly, like a predator stalking its prey. What happened next would haunt Sarah for years to come, leaving her with more than just emotional scars. The physical altercation began when Sarah tried to run past him to the door. Carlos grabbed her arm and threw her against the metal bed frame with such force that the sharp corner caught her just below her left shoulder blade. The impact was so severe that it not only left a deep gash requiring 17 stitches, but also created a distinctive scar that would remain with her for the rest of her life. The scar was shaped almost like a small wing, with jagged edges that caught the light in a particular way. When Mrs. Martinez returned from the store to find Sarah bleeding and Carlos nowhere to be found, she made the decision that would change everything. Instead of calling the police or child protective services, she chose to protect her biological son. She told the emergency room doctors that Sarah had fallen down the stairs, a lie that Sarah was too traumatized and afraid to contradict. The scar healed, but the wound to Sarah's trust in adults and institutions ran much deeper. Within 2 weeks, Sarah was removed from the Martinez home and placed with the Wilson family. The Wilsons were different from her previous placements. John Wilson was a retired Air Force mechanic, and his wife Margaret was a former teacher who had always wanted more children, but couldn't have any after their son Michael was born. They lived in a modest house near a small regional airport, where John worked part-time, maintaining civilian aircraft. The first thing Sarah noticed about the Wilson house was how quiet it was. There was no yelling, No competition for attention, no undercurrent of violence waiting to explode. John Wilson was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes about his character. He noticed that Sarah was fascinated by the aircraft that flew over their house, and he began teaching her about different types of planes, their capabilities, and the skill required to fly them. Margaret Wilson became the maternal figure Sarah had never really known. She was patient with Sarah's nightmares, understanding about her reluctance to talk about her past, and encouraging about her dreams for the future. When Sarah expressed interest in aviation, Margaret bought her books about famous pilots, both male and female, and helped her understand that the sky was not off limits to girls who were brave enough to reach for it. Under the Wilsons' care, Sarah began to flourish academically. Her grades improved dramatically, and she threw herself into her studies with the intensity of someone who understood that education was her ticket to a better life. She excelled in mathematics and science, subjects that would prove crucial for her future aviation career. More importantly, she began to develop the confidence and self-worth that had been systematically destroyed in her earlier placements. John Wilson often took Sarah to the airport where he worked, allowing her to observe the mechanics and pilots who kept the aircraft operational. She was fascinated by the precision required, the attention to detail, and the way everyone worked together to ensure safety. These experiences planted the seeds of her understanding that aviation was not just about flying fast or looking cool. It was about responsibility, teamwork, and the protection of human life. When Sarah turned 13, the Wilsons made the decision to adopt her officially. The legal proceedings were complex, requiring extensive background checks and court hearings, but the Wilsons never wavered in their commitment to making Sarah a permanent member of their family. The adoption was finalized on Sarah's 14th birthday, giving her not just a new legal status, but a new sense of belonging and stability she had never experienced before. High school brought new challenges and opportunities. Sarah continued to excel academically, but she also began participating in extracurricular activities that would prepare her for a military career. She joined the Junior ROTC program, where her natural leadership abilities and strong work ethic quickly set her apart from her peers. Her instructors noticed her dedication and began mentoring her toward a possible career in the Air Force. The ROTC program introduced Sarah to the structure and discipline of military life, concepts that actually provided her with comfort rather than restriction. After years of uncertainty and chaos, the clear expectations and defined hierarchies of military culture felt like a refuge. She thrived in the environment of mutual respect and shared purpose that characterized the best military units. During her junior year, Sarah attended a career fair where she met Captain Lisa Rodriguez, an F-16 pilot who was recruiting for the Air Force Academy. Captain Rodriguez was one of the first female fighter pilots Sarah had ever met in person, and their conversation was transformative. Captain Rodriguez saw something special in Sarah's combination of academic excellence, leadership potential, and quiet determination. She encouraged Sarah to apply for the academy and offered to help guide her through the application process. The application process for the Air Force Academy was grueling, requiring not just excellent grades and test scores, but also physical fitness assessments, medical examinations, and extensive interviews. Sarah approached each requirement with a methodical determination that had become her trademark. She spent extra hours in the gym building her physical strength, studied for standardized tests with the same intensity she brought to her regular coursework, and prepared for interviews by researching every aspect of Air Force culture and history. When the acceptance letter arrived during her senior year, Sarah felt a mixture of elation and terror that she would carry with her for years to come. She had achieved the first major milestone on her journey toward becoming a pilot, but she also understood that the real challenges were just beginning. The academy would test every aspect of her character, intelligence, and physical capability. More than that, it would force her to confront the parts of her past that she had worked so hard to bury. The night before leaving for the academy, Sarah sat with John and Margaret Wilson on their back porch, watching planes cross the darkening sky. John, who had become the closest thing to a real father she had ever known, gave her a small compass that had belonged to his grandfather, a World War II bomber pilot. Margaret hugged her tightly and whispered words of encouragement that would sustain Sarah through the difficult months ahead. As Sarah packed her few belongings, she caught sight of herself in the mirror and noticed the small scar below her left shoulder blade. For years, she had tried to hide it, wearing shirts that covered it completely and avoiding situations where it might be visible. But in that moment, she made a decision that would prove crucial to her future. Instead of seeing the scar as a mark of victimhood, she chose to view it as evidence of her survival and strength. She had endured the worst that life could throw at a child, and had not only survived but thrived. The journey to the Air Force Academy was both a physical relocation and a symbolic transition from her past to her future. Sarah understood that she was walking into an environment where her gender, her background, and her quiet demeanor might be seen as weaknesses by some. But she also knew that she possessed something that could not be taught or faked, an unbreakable determination forged in the fires of childhood trauma and tempered by years of hard work and preparation. The academy would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, pushing her to her physical and mental limits while demanding excellence in every aspect of performance. But Sarah Chun was ready for the challenge. She had spent her entire life preparing for this opportunity, and she was determined not to waste it. The scared little girl who had once watched planes from her foster home window was about to begin her transformation into one of the elite warriors who commanded those magnificent machines. As her bus pulled away from the Wilson house for the last time as a dependent child, Sarah pressed her face against the window and watched the familiar landscape disappear behind her. She was leaving behind everything she had known, but she was also moving toward everything she had dreamed of becoming. The scar hidden beneath her shirt pulsed with each heartbeat, a constant reminder that she had already survived the impossible and was capable of achieving anything she set her mind to accomplish. The Air Force Academy's imposing gates came into view as Sarah's transportation approached the Colorado Springs campus, and she felt her stomach tighten with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that had been building for weeks. The majestic Rocky Mountains provided a dramatic backdrop for what would become the most challenging and transformative 4 years of her life. As the vehicle passed through security checkpoints and onto the campus proper, Sarah caught her first glimpse of the iconic cadet chapel, its 17 spires reaching toward the sky like metallic prayers for the young men and women who would dedicate their lives to serving their country. The first few weeks at the academy were a brutal awakening to the realities of military life. The initial processing period, known as Beast Barracks, was designed to strip away civilian habits and instill the discipline and mindset necessary for military service. Sarah found herself surrounded by some of the most accomplished young people in America, valedictorians, star athletes, student government presidents, all reduced to the same level of confused and overwhelmed cadets struggling to adapt to their new reality. The physical demands were immediate and unrelenting. Daily physical training began before dawn, regardless of weather conditions. Sarah's body, which she had worked hard to strengthen in preparation for the academy, was pushed beyond limits she had never imagined. The Colorado altitude made every exercise more challenging, and the mountain weather could shift from blazing sunshine to sudden thunderstorms within minutes. During these early weeks, Sarah often thought about the scar hidden beneath her uniform, remembering that she had endured worse pain and survived greater challenges than anything the academy could throw at her. Academic life at the academy was equally demanding. Sarah's course load included advanced mathematics, physics, military history, leadership theory, and a host of other subjects designed to produce well-rounded officers capable of making critical decisions under pressure. The pace was relentless, with homework assignments that would have been considered full course loads at civilian universities compressed into single semesters. Sarah's study habits, developed during her high school years with the Wilsons, served her well, but she still found herself studying until the early hours of the morning most nights. The social dynamics at the academy presented their own unique challenges. Sarah quickly discovered that her quiet, observant nature was often misinterpreted as aloofness or lack of confidence by her fellow cadets. In an environment where assertiveness and vocal leadership were valued, her more subtle approach to influence and problem-solving sometimes went unnoticed or was undervalued. She had to learn to speak up in ways that felt foreign to her natural personality, pushing herself to be more vocal in group discussions and more assertive in leadership situations. Gender dynamics added another layer of complexity to her academy experience. While the Air Force had been admitting women for decades, the culture still bore traces of its exclusively male origins. Some of her male classmates questioned whether women belonged in combat roles, particularly in fighter aircraft where physical demands and split-second decision-making could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Sarah found herself constantly having to prove that she was not just as capable as her male counterparts, but potentially superior in many areas. The hazing and initiation rituals that were part of academy tradition tested Sarah in ways that brought back unwelcome memories of her childhood trauma. Upper-class cadets would subject new arrivals to various forms of physical and psychological pressure designed to build resilience and unit cohesion. While most of his treatment was within acceptable bounds, some incidents crossed lines that made Sarah uncomfortable and triggered flashbacks to her experiences with Carlos Martinez years earlier. One particularly difficult incident occurred during her third month at the academy. Sarah was assigned to a cleaning detail supervised by a second-year cadet named Thompson, who had developed a reputation for pushing first-year students harder than necessary. Thompson seemed to take particular pleasure in finding fault with Sarah's work, requiring her to repeat tasks multiple times and subjecting her to verbal abuse that felt uncomfortably similar to the intimidation she had experienced in foster care. The situation came to a head when Thompson ordered Sarah to clean the same section of barracks bathroom for the fourth time, claiming that her work was substandard despite clear evidence that she had done an excellent job. When Sarah politely questioned the fairness of the repeated assignments, Thompson stepped close to her, using his superior height and physical presence in a way that was clearly intended to intimidate. The proximity and aggressive body language triggered a panic response in Sarah that she had not experienced in years. For a moment, Sarah was transported back to that terrible evening in the Martinez house, facing Carlos as he approached her with malicious intent. Her breathing became shallow, her vision narrowed, and her hands began to shake uncontrollably. Thompson, either unaware of or indifferent to her distress, continued his verbal assault until Sarah's flight-or-fight response kicked in with unexpected intensity. Without fully realizing what she was doing, Sarah grabbed Thompson's wrist and twisted it with a martial arts technique she had learned during her ROTC training, applying just enough pressure to cause significant discomfort without causing permanent damage. The confrontation was broken up by other cadets who had heard the commotion, and both Sarah and Thompson were brought before their supervising officers for disciplinary action. Sarah's explanation of the incident was careful and measured, acknowledging her overreaction while also detailing the circumstances that had led to her response. The investigating officer, Captain Williams, was a perceptive woman who recognized that there were deeper issues at play than a simple conflict between cadets. Captain Williams called Sarah into her office for a private conversation that would prove to be a turning point in her academy experience. During this discussion, Sarah revealed for the first time the details of her childhood trauma and how certain situations could trigger intense emotional responses that she was still learning to manage. Captain Williams, who had her own history of overcoming personal challenges, provided Sarah with resources for counseling and stress management, while also ensuring that she was not subjected to further harassment or intimidation. This incident led to Sarah's introduction to Dr. Patricia Morrison, a civilian psychologist who worked with the academy to help cadets deal with various personal and academic stressors. Dr. Morrison specialized in trauma recovery and had extensive experience working with military personnel who had experienced childhood abuse or other forms of early trauma. Her approach was practical and goal-oriented, focusing on developing coping strategies rather than dwelling on past experiences. Through her work with Dr. Morrison, Sarah began to understand that her childhood experiences, while traumatic, had also developed in her certain strengths that would serve her well in military service. Her ability to remain calm under pressure, her heightened awareness of potential threats, and her natural empathy for others who were struggling were all positive traits that had emerged from her difficult early years. The scar that she had tried so hard to hide became a symbol not of victimhood, but of resilience and survival. As her second year at the academy began, Sarah had developed greater confidence in her abilities and a clearer understanding of her career goals. She had decided to pursue a track that would lead to pilot training, despite the additional challenges this would present for a woman in a male-dominated field. Her academic performance had been consistently excellent, particularly in the technical subjects that were crucial for aviation careers. Her leadership evaluations had also improved dramatically as she learned to balance her natural thoughtfulness with the decisiveness required of military officers. The summer training programs provided Sarah with her first direct experience of military aviation beyond the theoretical knowledge she had gained in the classroom. She was selected for a program that allowed cadets to observe and participate in various Air Force operations, including time spent with active fighter squadrons. These experiences reinforced her determination to become a pilot, while also giving her realistic insight into the demands and responsibilities of the role. During one particularly memorable training exercise, Sarah was assigned to observe operations at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, where she worked with an F-16 squadron preparing for deployment. The squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, no relation to her former foster family, took special interest in Sarah's background and career aspirations. He was impressed by her technical knowledge, her attention to detail, and her mature approach to learning about military aviation. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez arranged for Sarah to experience a back-seat ride in a two-seat F-16 trainer, her first actual flight in a military aircraft. The experience was everything she had dreamed it would be, and more. The sensation of acceleration during takeoff, the incredible view of the Earth from high altitude, and the precise choreography required to operate such a sophisticated machine all confirmed that she had chosen the right career path. More importantly, the flight gave her confidence that she possessed the physical and mental attributes necessary to handle the demands of piloting high-performance aircraft. The third year at the academy brought increased responsibility and leadership opportunities. Sarah was selected as a squadron commander within the cadet wing, a position that required her to oversee the training and development of younger cadets while also maintaining her own academic and military performance standards. This role tested her leadership abilities in ways that classroom theory could never replicate, forcing her to make difficult decisions about discipline, resource allocation, and personnel management. Her experience as a squadron commander also provided Sarah with valuable insight into the challenges faced by women in leadership positions within military organizations. She discovered that she had to work harder than her male counterparts to establish credibility and authority, but she also found that her more collaborative and empathetic leadership style was often more effective in motivating and developing subordinates. Her approach to leadership, informed by her understanding of what it felt like to be vulnerable and powerless, created an environment where struggling cadets felt safe seeking help and guidance. As graduation approached, Sarah faced the crucial selection process that would determine her career specialty within the Air Force. Her grades, leadership evaluations, and fitness scores had all been consistently excellent, making her competitive for any career field she chose to pursue. However, selection for pilot training was particularly competitive, with far more qualified candidates than available positions. The selection process included extensive medical examinations, psychological evaluations, and interviews designed to identify candidates with the highest probability of success in the demanding pilot training program. The medical examination included a thorough physical inspection that would reveal the scars Sarah had carried since childhood. When the flight surgeon conducting the examination noticed the distinctive mark below her left shoulder blade, he asked about its origin and whether it might affect her ability to operate aircraft controls or emergency equipment. Sarah's explanation of the scar's history was matter-of-fact and confident, demonstrating that she had come to terms with this part of her past and that it would not interfere with her professional duties. The psychological evaluation was perhaps the most challenging part of the selection process for Sarah, as it required her to discuss her childhood experiences and demonstrate that she had developed healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with stress and trauma. The evaluating psychologist was impressed by Sarah's self-awareness, her commitment to personal growth, and her ability to transform negative experiences into sources of strength and empathy. Her work with Dr. Morrison had clearly been effective in helping her develop the emotional resilience required for military aviation. The final interview was conducted by a panel of senior officers, including several experienced pilots who would assess her motivation, judgment, and potential for success in aviation careers. Sarah's performance in this interview was exemplary, demonstrating not only her technical knowledge and leadership abilities, but also her deep understanding of the responsibilities and sacrifices involved in military service. Her passion for aviation was evident, but it was balanced by a mature appreciation for the seriousness of the commitment she was making. When the selection results were announced, Sarah's name appeared on the list of cadets chosen for pilot training. The moment she saw her name, she felt a rush of emotions that included relief, excitement, and a deep sense of validation for all the years of hard work and preparation. She thought immediately of John and Margaret Wilson, who had believed in her potential when she could barely believe in herself. She also thought about the scared little girl who had watched planes from her foster home window, never imagining that she would one day be selected to fly those magnificent machines herself. Graduation from the Air Force Academy was a celebration of achievement that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another in Sarah's journey. As she walked across the stage to receive her commission as a second lieutenant, she could feel the scar beneath her uniform. No longer a source of shame or painful memories, but a reminder of how far she had traveled and how much she had overcome. The scared, powerless child had been transformed into a confident, capable officer ready to serve her country and protect others from harm. The road ahead would bring new challenges, as pilot training was notoriously difficult and demanding. Many qualified candidates would fail to complete the program successfully, and the pressure would be intense from the very first day. But Sarah Chun was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had already proven to herself and others that she could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles through determination, hard work, and the support of people who believe in her potential. The little girl who had once felt powerless and afraid was about to begin her transformation into one of the most elite warriors in the world. Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas stretched endlessly under the brutal summer sun as Second Lieutenant Sarah Chun arrived for the beginning of her pilot training journey. The heat shimmered off the concrete flight line like liquid mercury, and the T-6 Texan, two training aircraft, sat in neat rows, their white and orange paint schemes gleaming in the oppressive heat. Sarah had dreamed of this moment for years, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of what she was about to undertake. Pilot training was designed to push candidates beyond their limits, weeding out those who lacked the mental toughness, physical capability, or technical aptitude required to operate military aircraft safely and effectively. The first phase of training focused on fundamental flying skills in the T-6 Texan II, a turboprop aircraft specifically designed for training military pilots. Sarah's first instructor was Captain Rodriguez, a former F-16 pilot who had been reassigned to training duties after a combat deployment. Captain Rodriguez had a reputation for being demanding but fair, with an ability to identify potential problems early and correct them before they became ingrained bad habits. He took one look at Sarah's academy records and previous training reports and immediately understood that he was working with someone special, but he also knew that talent alone would not guarantee success in the demanding world of military aviation. The ground school portion of training was intensive, covering aerodynamics, aircraft systems, emergency procedures, navigation, and meteorology. Sarah's academy education had prepared her well for the academic challenges, and she consistently scored among the top students in her class. However, she quickly learned that knowing the theory of flight was very different from actually controlling an aircraft in three-dimensional space while managing multiple systems and responding to constantly changing conditions. Her first solo flight was a milestone that would remain etched in Sarah's memory for the rest of her life. After weeks of dual instruction with Captain Rodriguez, she was finally cleared to take the T-6 up by herself. As she taxied to the runway alone for the first time, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and terror that made her hands shake slightly on the controls. The takeoff was smooth, and as the aircraft lifted off the ground, Sarah experienced a sensation of freedom and power that exceeded even her highest expectations. Flying alone gave Sarah the opportunity to truly understand her own capabilities and limitations. Without an instructor in the back seat to provide guidance or intervention, she had to rely entirely on her training and instincts to handle unexpected situations. During one memorable solo flight, she encountered severe turbulence that tested her ability to maintain control while managing her own fear and stress response. The experience of successfully navigating through the rough air gave her confidence that would prove crucial in later phases of training. The academic and flight training portions of the program were complemented by survival training designed to prepare pilots for the possibility of being shot down or forced to eject over hostile territory. This training included wilderness survival skills, resistance to interrogation techniques, and escape and evasion tactics. For Sarah, some aspects of this training triggered memories of her childhood trauma, particularly the psychological pressure techniques used during simulated prisoner of war training. However, her work with Dr. Morrison had given her effective coping strategies, and she was able to complete the training successfully while actually using the experience to further strengthen her mental resilience. As training progressed, Sarah's natural aptitude for flying became increasingly apparent to her instructors and fellow students. She had an intuitive understanding of aircraft handling that allowed her to make smooth, precise control inputs, even in challenging conditions. Her situational awareness was exceptional, and she demonstrated the ability to manage multiple tasks simultaneously without becoming overwhelmed or losing focus on the most critical priorities. These skills, combined with her strong academic performance and mature judgment, made her a standout candidate for advanced training in high-performance aircraft. The transition to the T-38 Talon marked a significant step up in complexity and performance. The T-38 was a supersonic jet trainer that more closely approximated the handling characteristics and speeds of operational fighter aircraft. Sarah's first flight in the T-38 was a revelation, as she experienced true jet propulsion and supersonic flight for the first time. The acceleration was incredible, and the precision required to fly formation with other aircraft at high speeds demanded levels of concentration and coordination that tested every skill she had developed. Formation flying became one of Sarah's strongest areas of expertise. She had a natural ability to maintain precise positioning relative to other aircraft while executing complex maneuvers at high speeds. Her instructors noted that she seemed to anticipate the movements of lead aircraft before they happened, adjusting her position smoothly and efficiently to maintain perfect formation integrity. This skill would prove crucial for a future career, as formation flying was a fundamental requirement for fighter aircraft operations. The final phase of pilot training included advanced maneuvers, instrument flying, and cross-country navigation flights that tested students' ability to plan and execute complex missions independently. Sarah excelled in all these areas, but it was her performance under pressure that truly set her apart from her peers. During one training flight, she experienced a simulated emergency that required her to quickly diagnose a system malfunction, execute appropriate emergency procedures, and navigate to an alternate airfield for landing. Her calm, methodical approach to problem-solving under stress impressed her instructors and demonstrated the mental toughness required for combat aviation. The competition for fighter aircraft assignments was intense, with only the top graduates earning the opportunity to continue to specialized fighter training. Selection criteria included not only flying ability and academic performance, but also leadership potential, physical fitness, and psychological evaluation results. Sarah's overall performance package was outstanding, but she knew that being selected for fighter training as a woman would require her to be significantly better than the male candidates, as there were still limited opportunities for women in combat aviation roles. The assignment selection process was conducted through a combination of class ranking and individual preferences, with the highest-ranking graduates getting first choice of available assignments. Sarah had graduated second in her class overall, which put her in an excellent position to compete for fighter assignments. When the selection board reviewed her records, they found a candidate with exceptional flying ability, strong academic credentials, excellent leadership evaluations, and the kind of personal resilience that suggested she could handle the intense pressures of combat aviation. Sarah's selection for F-22 Raptor training was both a tremendous honor and a significant challenge. The F-22 was the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world, representing the cutting edge of aviation technology and requiring pilots with exceptional skills and judgment. The training program for F-22 pilots was notoriously difficult, with a high washout rate, even among experienced pilots transitioning from other fighter aircraft. For Sarah, this assignment represented the culmination of her childhood dreams and the beginning of the most demanding phase of her military career. The transition to Luke Air Force Base in Arizona for F-22 training marked another major milestone in Sarah's journey. Luke was home to some of the most experienced fighter pilots in the Air Force, and the training environment was both supportive and intensely competitive. Sarah quickly discovered that her success in earlier phases of training, while impressive, had only prepared her for the basic requirements of fighter aviation. Flying the F-22 required a completely different level of skill, knowledge, and mental capacity. The F-22's advanced systems included stealth technology, sophisticated radar and weapons systems, and flight controls that allowed the aircraft to perform maneuvers that would be impossible in conventional fighters. Learning to operate these systems effectively required months of intensive study and practice, with each new capability building on previously mastered skills. Sarah approached this challenge with the same methodical determination that had carried her through the academy and pilot training, but she also had to adapt to the unique demands of single-seat fighter operations. Unlike the two-seat trainers she had flown previously, the F-22 was a single-seat aircraft, meaning that pilots had to manage all systems and tactical situations completely independently. There was no instructor in the back seat to provide guidance or backup, and the speeds and altitudes involved left no margin for error. Sarah's first solo flight in the F-22 was both exhilarating and terrifying. These skills required not only technical proficiency with aircraft systems, but also tactical judgment and the ability to make split-second decisions in rapidly changing combat scenarios. Sarah's background in strategic thinking, developed through her academy education and leadership experiences, serve her well in learning to anticipate enemy actions and position herself advantageously in aerial engagements. Throughout her F-22 training, Sarah continued to encounter occasional skepticism about women's capabilities in fighter aviation, though these attitudes were becoming less common as more women proved themselves in combat roles. She handled these situations with the same quiet confidence that had carried her through previous challenges, allowing her performance to speak for itself rather than engaging in arguments about gender roles in the military. Her instructors quickly recognized that she was among the most capable pilots they had trained, regardless of gender. The final evaluation phase of F-22 training included comprehensive testing of all the skills and knowledge acquired during the program. Sarah was required to demonstrate proficiency in air-to-air combat, air-to-ground strikes, defensive counter-air operations, and various other mission types that F-22 pilots might be called upon to execute. Her performance during these evaluations was outstanding, earning her recognition as one of the top graduates in her training class and positioning her for assignment to an operational F-22 squadron. The graduation ceremony for F-22 training was a relatively small affair, as the number of pilots qualified to fly the aircraft was strictly limited. Sarah's parents, John and Margaret Wilson, traveled from their home to attend the ceremony, their pride evident as they watched their adopted daughter receive her wings as a fully qualified F-22 pilot. For Sarah, the moment represented not just personal achievement, but validation of all the people who had believed in her potential when she could barely believe in herself. Assignment to the 94th Fighter Squadron at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia marked the beginning of Sarah's operational career as an F-22 pilot. Langley was home to some of the most experienced Raptor pilots in the Air Force, and the squadron had a reputation for excellence that demanded the highest standards of performance from all its members. Sarah understood that her real education as a fighter pilot was just beginning, as operational flying presented challenges and responsibilities that no training program could fully replicate. The 94th Fighter Squadron was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Davis, a veteran pilot with extensive combat experience who had been instrumental in developing tactics and procedures for F-22 operations. Lieutenant Colonel Davis had personally reviewed Sarah's training records and was impressed by her technical proficiency and mature judgment. However, he also understood that transitioning from training to operational status required new pilots to prove themselves all over again in the demanding environment of a combat-ready squadron. Sarah's initial months with the 94 Squadron were focused on upgrading her skills to mission-ready status, which required demonstration of proficiency in all the operational mission types that the squadron might be called upon to execute. This process included extensive flying in various tactical scenarios, participation in large-scale training exercises, and integration with other military units and coalition partners. Sarah approached these challenges with characteristic determination, working extra hours to study tactics and procedures while also building relationships with her new squadron mates. The squadron operated under a demanding training schedule that kept pilots sharp and ready for potential deployments on short notice. Sarah participated in exercises ranging from local training flights to large-scale war games involving multiple services and allied nations. These exercises tested not only her individual flying skills, but also her ability to operate as part of complex military operations involving dozens of aircraft and thousands of personnel. Her first major exercise involved a simulated conflict scenario where the squadron had to establish air superiority over a large geographical area while protecting ground forces from enemy air attack. Sarah was assigned as wingman to one of the squadron's most experienced pilots, Major Thompson, who served as both mentor and evaluator during the complex missions. Her performance during the exercise was excellent, demonstrating not only technical proficiency, but also the tactical judgment and teamwork skills essential for effective fighter operations. As Sarah completed her first year with the operational squadron, she had established herself as one of the unit's most promising young pilots. Her combination of technical skill, strategic thinking, and personal resilience made her an invaluable asset to the squadron and positioned her for increased responsibilities and leadership opportunities. However, she also knew that the ultimate test of her abilities would come when the squadron was called upon to execute real-world missions in support of national security objectives. The stage was now set for the incident that would change everything, an encounter with a senior general that would transform Sarah's career and validate everything she had worked so hard to achieve. But before that moment arrived, she had to navigate one more significant challenge that would test not only her flying skills, but also her ability to handle adversity and prejudice in the demanding world of military aviation. Lieutenant Sarah Chun had been with the 94th Fighter Squadron for 18 months when the incident occurred that would test every ounce of strength and resilience she had developed throughout her challenging journey. The squadron had been selected to participate in Red Flag, the Air Force's premier combat training exercise held at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Red Flag brought together the best pilots from various squadrons and allied nations to practice large-scale combat operations in realistic scenarios designed to prepare aircrews for actual warfare. The exercise was particularly significant because it included several international participants, including pilots from allied nations who were evaluating the possibility of purchasing F-22 aircraft for their own air forces. The political and military stakes were high, as successful demonstration of American air power capabilities could influence multi-billion-dollar defense contracts and strengthen international alliances. Every aspect of the exercise would be closely monitored by senior military and civilian leaders, including high-ranking Pentagon officials who rarely observe training exercises in person. Sarah had been selected as one of 4 F-22 pilots from her squadron to participate in Red Flag, a significant honor that reflected her rapid development as an operational pilot. Her flight commander, Major Thompson, had specifically recommended her inclusion based on her exceptional performance during recent training exercises and her growing reputation as one of the squadron's most reliable and skilled aviators. However, Sarah also understood that her participation would subject her to intense scrutiny from pilots and observers who might question whether a relatively inexperienced female pilot belonged in such a high-profile exercise. The first week of Red Flag proceeded smoothly, with Sarah performing well in various mission scenarios ranging from air superiority flights to precision strike operations. Her ability to maintain situational awareness in complex, multi-threat environments impressed both her squadron mates and pilots from other units. During debriefing sessions, her tactical insights and suggestions for improvement demonstrated the kind of analytical thinking that distinguished exceptional pilots from merely competent ones. However, tensions began to develop between Sarah and Captain Jake Morrison, an experienced F-16 pilot from another squadron who had been vocal about his skepticism regarding women in combat aviation roles. Morrison was a technically proficient pilot with a strong combat record, but he also held traditional views about military roles that put him at odds with the Air Force's evolving policies on gender integration. His comments during mission briefings and social interactions became increasingly pointed, suggesting that Sarah's inclusion in the exercise was more about political correctness than operational capability. The situation escalated during the second week of the exercise when Sarah and Morrison were assigned to fly as part of the same strike package targeting a heavily defended simulated enemy installation. The mission required precise coordination between F-22s providing air superiority and F-16s conducting ground attack operations. Sarah was designated as the mission commander for the F-22 element, a role that required her to make tactical decisions affecting the entire strike package's success and safety. During the mission planning phase, Morrison openly questioned Sarah's tactical plan, suggesting that her inexperience made her unsuitable for the mission commander role. His challenges were technically framed as professional concerns about mission success, but his tone and body language clearly conveyed personal animosity and gender-based prejudice. Sarah responded to these challenges with calm professionalism, explaining her tactical reasoning and demonstrating comprehensive knowledge of both friendly and enemy capabilities. Her measured response contrasted sharply with Morrison's increasingly aggressive demeanor. The actual mission began without incident, with all aircraft launching on schedule and proceeding toward their assigned targets according to the planned timeline. Sarah's F-22 element established air superiority over the target area, successfully engaging and defeating several simulated enemy fighters while clearing the way for Morrison's F-16s to attack ground targets. The coordination between different aircraft types was working perfectly, demonstrating the kind of combined operations that would be essential in actual combat scenarios. However, the situation changed dramatically when unexpected enemy surface-to-air missiles were introduced into the scenario by exercise controllers seeking to test pilot reaction to rapidly changing threat environments. The missile launches created immediate danger for Morrison's F-16 formation, which was exposed and vulnerable during their attack runs. Sarah, monitoring the overall tactical situation from her position above the target area, immediately recognized the threat and began coordinating defensive measures to protect the ground attack aircraft. Sarah's response to the crisis demonstrated both her tactical expertise and her natural leadership abilities under extreme pressure. She quickly identified safe escape routes for the F-16s, while simultaneously coordinating suppression attacks against the missile sites using her own aircraft's advanced capabilities. Her calm, clear radio communications provided Morrison and his formation with the information they needed to evade the missiles while still completing their assigned strikes against priority targets. Morrison's initial response to Sarah's tactical guidance was resistance and skepticism, as his prejudice against female leadership made him reluctant to follow her directions even in a life-threatening situation. This hesitation cost precious seconds during which his formation remained exposed to enemy fire, creating unnecessary risk for all involved aircraft. Only when his wingman explicitly acknowledged Sarah's superior situational awareness and urged compliance with her instructions did Morrison finally execute the recommended defensive maneuvers. The successful resolution of the crisis, achieved through Sarah's quick thinking and effective leadership, should have settled any questions about her competence and professionalism. However, Morrison's response during the post-mission debriefing revealed the depth of his animosity and unwillingness to accept her capabilities. He attempted to downplay her contribution to the mission's success while criticizing her tactical decisions in ways that demonstrated his failure to understand the complex threat environment she had successfully managed. The tension between Sarah and Morrison came to a head during an informal gathering of pilots at the officers' club later that evening. Morrison, emboldened by alcohol and the supportive presence of like-minded colleagues, made increasingly personal attacks on Sarah's qualifications and right to fly combat aircraft. His comments progressed from professional criticism to personal insults that specifically targeted her gender and implied that her presence in fighter squadrons compromised mission effectiveness and unit cohesion. Sarah initially attempted to de-escalate the situation by removing herself from Morrison's proximity and focusing on conversations with more supportive colleagues. However, Morrison interpreted her withdrawal as weakness and followed her across the room, continuing his verbal assault in front of an increasingly uncomfortable audience of pilots from multiple squadrons. His behavior had moved well beyond acceptable professional discourse and into the realm of harassment that could not be ignored or tolerated. The confrontation reached its climax when Morrison, apparently frustrated by Sarah's refusal to engage with his provocations, made a physical gesture that involved grabbing her shoulder in a manner that was clearly intended to intimidate rather than communicate. The contact caused Sarah's shirt to shift slightly, revealing the edge of the distinctive scar below her left shoulder blade that she had carried since childhood. Morrison's eyes immediately focused on the visible mark, and his expression changed from angry determination to something approaching curiosity. Morrison's decision to comment on Sarah's scar represented a crossing of personal boundaries that transformed the situation from professional conflict to something much more serious and potentially explosive. His crude speculation about the scar's origin, combined with invasive questions about her personal history, triggered memories and emotions that Sarah had worked years to control and channel constructively. For a moment, she was transported back to that terrible night in the Martinez foster home, facing another aggressive male who sought to use her vulnerability against her. However, instead of the panic and helplessness she had felt as a child, Sarah experienced a surge of controlled anger that crystallized her determination to end Morrison's harassment definitively. Her response was swift and decisive, involving a defensive technique she had learned during survival training that effectively neutralized Morrison's aggressive posture without causing permanent injury. The move was executed with precision that demonstrated both her training and her complete control over her emotional state despite the intensity of the situation. The physical confrontation was witnessed by several pilots who immediately intervened to separate the combatants and prevent further escalation. Among the witnesses was Colonel Richards, the Red Flag Exercise Director, who had arrived at the officers' club to check on pilot morale and had observed the entire incident from across the room. Colonel Richards' presence meant that the situation would receive immediate and thorough investigation at the highest levels of command. The investigation that followed was comprehensive and impartial, involving interviews with all witnesses and a detailed review of the events leading up to the physical confrontation. Sarah's account of Morrison's harassment was corroborated by multiple witnesses, and security camera footage confirmed the sequence of events that had led to her defensive action. The investigation also revealed a pattern of inappropriate behavior by Morrison toward female personnel that had not been previously reported through official channels. Colonel Richards' handling of the investigation reflected both his commitment to maintaining good order and discipline and his recognition that Sarah had been the victim of sustained harassment that had crossed clearly defined boundaries of acceptable professional behavior. Morrison was found to have violated multiple regulations regarding professional conduct, harassment, and inappropriate physical contact. The investigation recommended significant disciplinary action that would likely end his career as a fighter pilot. For Sarah, the investigation process was both vindicating and emotionally challenging, as it required her to discuss aspects of her personal history that she preferred to keep private. However, the support she received from squadron mates, superior officers, and even pilots from other units demonstrated that Morrison's attitudes were not representative of the broader fighter pilot community. Her professional reputation remained intact, and her handling of the crisis actually enhanced her standing among colleagues who had witnessed her grace under pressure. The incident also brought Sarah to the attention of senior Air Force leadership who were monitoring the red flag exercise for various strategic and political reasons. Her demonstrated ability to maintain mission focus while dealing with personal harassment impressed observers who understood that such resilience would be essential for pilots operating in actual combat environments. The combination of her technical proficiency, tactical judgment, and personal strength made her exactly the kind of pilot the Air Force wanted to showcase to international allies and domestic political leaders. Word of the incident and Sarah's professional response reached the highest levels of Air Force command, including General Patricia Hayes, the service's most senior female officer and a pioneer in her own right for women's integration into combat roles. General Hayes had personally faced many of the same challenges that Sarah was encountering, and she recognized the strategic importance of ensuring that talented female pilots receive the support and opportunities necessary to succeed in their demanding careers. General Hayes' decision to personally observe Sarah's performance during the remaining red flag missions represented an unprecedented level of senior leadership attention for a relatively junior pilot. However, General Hayes understood that Sarah's success or failure would send important messages to future generations of women considering military aviation careers, and she wanted to ensure that political and personal considerations did not overshadow legitimate professional evaluation. Sarah's performance during General Hayes' observation period was exemplary, demonstrating not only her individual capabilities, but also her positive impact on unit effectiveness and morale. Her ability to integrate seamlessly with pilots from multiple squadrons and countries, combined with her tactical expertise and natural leadership qualities, confirmed that she represented the future of American military aviation rather than a social experiment or political statement. The stage was now set for the encounter that would change Sarah's life forever. General Hayes had seen enough to convince her that Sarah deserved opportunities commensurate with her abilities, but she also understood that such opportunities would require powerful advocacy from the highest levels of military leadership. The general's plan to introduce Sarah to other senior leaders would soon lead to a chance meeting that would transform Sarah's career and validate everything she had worked so hard to achieve. As Red Flag concluded, Sarah reflected on how the challenges she had faced during the exercise had actually strengthened her resolve and clarified her commitment to serving her country as a fighter pilot. The harassment she had endured from Morrison was unfortunate, but not unexpected, and her ability to handle it professionally while maintaining focus on mission requirements demonstrated the kind of mental toughness that would serve her well throughout her military career. She had proven to herself and others that she belonged in the elite community of fighter pilots, regardless of the prejudices and obstacles that some individuals might place in her path. The morning sun cast long shadows across Nellis Air Force Base as Lieutenant Sarah Chun prepared for what would become the most significant day of her military career. 3 months had passed since the red flag incident with Captain Morrison, and Sarah had returned to her regular duties with the 94th Fighter Squadron with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The investigation's outcome had vindicated her actions and resulted in Morrison's removal from fighter aircraft duties, sending a clear message throughout the Air Force that harassment and discrimination would not be tolerated regardless of the perpetrator's rank or experience. Sarah's performance had only improved following the incident, as she channeled her experiences into even greater dedication to excellence in all aspects of her duties. Her flight commanders noted her increased assertiveness in tactical situations and her growing confidence as a leader among her peers. Word of her professionalism under extreme pressure had spread throughout the fighter community, earning her respect that transcended the usual barriers of gender and experience level. On this particular morning, Sarah had been selected to participate in a demonstration flight for a group of visiting dignitaries that included members of Congress, Pentagon officials, and allied military leaders. The demonstration was designed to showcase the capabilities of the F-22 Raptor and the skill of American pilots to an audience that would influence future defense, spending, and international military cooperation agreements. Sarah's inclusion in the demonstration reflected her squadron commander's confidence in her abilities and her growing reputation as one of the Air Force's most promising young pilots. The flight demonstration was scheduled to begin at 10:00 hours, with 4 F-22s performing a series of maneuvers designed to highlight the aircraft's advanced capabilities in air superiority, ground attack, and defensive operations. Sarah would be flying as number 3 in the formation, a position that required precise coordination with other aircraft while executing complex maneuvers at high speeds and low altitudes. The routine had been practiced extensively, but performing in front of high-ranking officials added pressure that tested every pilot concentration and skill. As Sarah completed her pre-flight inspection of her assigned F-22, she noticed increased activity around the VIP viewing area where the distinguished visitors were assembling to observe the demonstration. Among the crowd of officials in business suits and military dress uniforms, she could see several individuals whose faces she recognized from military publications and news coverage. The presence of such senior leadership emphasized the importance of executing a flawless demonstration that would reflect positively on both her squadron and the Air Force as a whole. The pre-flight briefing had covered every detail of the planned demonstration, including specific maneuvers, altitudes, and safety procedures designed to minimize risk while maximizing the visual impact of the performance. Sarah's flight leader emphasized the importance of maintaining precise formation positioning throughout the demonstration, as any deviation from planned parameters could compromise both safety and the professional appearance of the display. The briefing also included contingency procedures for dealing with potential mechanical problems or weather changes that might require modifications to the planned routine. As the demonstration aircraft taxied to the runway, Sarah could feel the familiar mixture of excitement and focused concentration that preceded every flight. Her pre-takeoff checks were executed with a mechanical precision that had become second nature after years of training and operational experience. The F-22's advanced systems responded perfectly to her inputs, and engine parameters were well within normal ranges as she awaited clearance for takeoff. The demonstration began flawlessly, with all 4 aircraft launching in perfect sequence and climbing to their assigned altitudes according to the planned timeline. Sarah's position in the formation required her to maintain precise spacing while executing coordinated turns and maneuvers that showcased the F-22's incredible agility and responsiveness. The morning air was smooth, providing ideal conditions for the complex aerobatic sequences that would demonstrate the aircraft's capabilities to the assembled dignitaries. The first phase of the demonstration involved formation flying at various altitudes and configurations, showing the aircraft's ability to operate cohesively as part of larger tactical packages. Sarah's flying was precise and confident, maintaining perfect position relative to the lead aircraft while executing rolls, climbs, and high-speed passes that highlighted the F-22's performance envelope. The formation synchronization was so precise that the 4 aircraft appeared to move as a single entity despite the complex maneuvers being performed. As the demonstration progressed through its planned sequence, Sarah became aware of radio chatter indicating that one of the VIP observers was requesting permission to come closer to the flight line for a better view of the aircraft operations. This was an unusual request, as security protocols normally kept visitors at a safe distance from active flight operations. However, the request was coming from someone with sufficient authority to override standard procedures, suggesting that this particular observer held very senior rank or position. The final phase of the demonstration called for individual aircraft to perform solo maneuvers that would showcase specific capabilities not visible during formation flying. Sarah's assigned sequence included a vertical climb to demonstrate the F-22's exceptional thrust-to-weight ratio, followed by a series of tight turns that would highlight the aircraft's maneuverability at various speeds and altitudes. These maneuvers required maximum performance from both aircraft and pilot, leaving no margin for error while operating close to the aircraft's performance limits. Sarah's solo demonstration was executed flawlessly, with each maneuver performed exactly as briefed while maintaining the kind of precision that demonstrated both her technical skill and the aircraft's incredible capabilities. The vertical climb was particularly impressive, as the F-22 accelerated straight up until it was nearly invisible to ground observers before rolling over into a controlled descent that brought it back into visual range. Her radio communications throughout the sequence were crisp and professional, providing ground controllers with continuous updates on her position and intentions. As Sarah completed her portion of the demonstration and rejoined the formation for the final pass over the viewing area, she felt the satisfaction that came from executing a complex mission exactly as planned. The demonstration had gone perfectly, with no technical problems or deviations from the planned sequence. Her performance had been witnessed by some of the most senior military and civilian leaders in the country, providing valuable exposure that could influence her future career opportunities. The landing sequence was as precise as the rest of the demonstration, with all 4 aircraft touching down in close succession and taxiing back to the flight line where ground crews were waiting to secure the aircraft. Sarah's post-flight inspection revealed no mechanical issues, and her aircraft had performed flawlessly throughout the demanding demonstration sequence. As she completed her shutdown procedures and prepared to debrief the mission with her flight leader, she noticed unusual activity around the VIP area that suggested the demonstration had made a significant impression on the distinguished observers. However, as Sarah climbed down from her aircraft and began removing her helmet and flight gear, she was approached by a member of the ground crew who informed her that her presence was immediately requested in the squadron operations building. This was an unusual request immediately following a demonstration flight, and Sarah wondered if there had been some problem with her performance that required immediate discussion with supervisors. As she walked toward the operations building, still wearing her flight suit and carrying her helmet, Sarah noticed that several of the VIP observers were also moving in the same direction. Among the group was a senior officer whose uniform and bearing clearly identified him as a general officer, though she could not immediately determine his specific rank or identity from her position. The fact that such senior leadership was taking time to visit the Squadron Operations Center suggested that something significant was happening beyond the normal post-demonstration activities. Inside the operations building, Sarah was directed to a small briefing room where she found herself face-to-face with General Michael Harrison, a 4-star general who served as the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. General Harrison was one of the most senior officers in the service, with responsibility for day-to-day operations of the entire Air Force. His presence at Nellis was not unusual, as senior leaders frequently observed training exercises and demonstrations, but his request for a private meeting with Sarah was unprecedented for an officer of her relatively junior rank. General Harrison's demeanor was professional, but warm as he introduced himself, and thanked Sarah for her outstanding performance during the demonstration. He explained that he had specifically requested the opportunity to meet with her because her reputation for excellence and professionalism had come to his attention through multiple channels, including General Hayes and other senior leaders who had observed her performance during various exercises and training events. As their conversation progressed, General Harrison revealed that he had been following Sarah's career with particular interest because her background and achievements represented exactly the kind of story that the Air Force wanted to share with the American people and international allies. Her journey from foster care to the cockpit of the nation's most advanced fighter aircraft demonstrated the opportunities available to those willing to work hard and persevere through challenges. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn when General Harrison mentioned that he had noticed something during the demonstration that had particularly caught his attention. He had been observing through high-powered binoculars as Sarah performed her post-flight inspection, and he had noticed what appeared to be a distinctive scar visible at the edge of her flight suit near her left shoulder. The general's observational skills, honed by decades of military service, had detected the mark that Sarah had carried since childhood. General Harrison's next words would change Sarah's life forever. He explained that the scar he had observed looked remarkably similar to one carried by his own daughter, who had been killed in a car accident several years earlier while serving as an Army officer in Afghanistan. His daughter had received her scar during childhood in circumstances similar to Sarah's, and seeing the familiar mark had triggered powerful memories and emotions that he had struggled to control during the demonstration. The general revealed that his daughter's death had devastated him and his family, particularly because she had overcome tremendous personal challenges to achieve success in military service before her life was tragically cut short. Seeing Sarah's scar had reminded him not only of his daughter, but also of the incredible resilience and strength that both women had demonstrated in transforming childhood trauma into sources of motivation and achievement. General Harrison he explained that the Air Force was launching a new initiative to showcase the diversity and excellence of its personnel through a series of high-profile assignments and public appearances designed to inspire young Americans to consider military service. He wanted Sarah to be the face of this initiative, serving as a spokesperson and role model who could demonstrate that military aviation was open to anyone with the talent and determination to succeed. The assignment would involve a combination of operational flying duties and public relations responsibilities, including speaking at universities, appearing at air shows, and participating in media interviews designed to promote Air Force recruiting and retention objectives. Sarah would retain her status as an operational F-22 pilot while also taking on responsibilities that would give her national visibility and accelerate her career progression through the officer ranks. General Harrison emphasized that this opportunity was being offered based solely on Sarah's demonstrated excellence as a pilot and officer, not as a publicity stunt or social experiment. However, he also acknowledged that her background and personal story would make her a particularly effective advocate for the Air Force's values and mission. Her ability to overcome adversity and achieve excellence in one of the military's most demanding career fields made her exactly the kind of role model that could inspire others to pursue similar paths. Sarah's initial response to the general's offer was a mixture of honor, excitement, and trepidation. The opportunity represented a chance to make a significant impact beyond her individual contributions as a pilot, potentially influencing the lives of countless young people who might be inspired by her story to pursue their own dreams despite challenging circumstances. However, she also understood that accepting the assignment would subject her to unprecedented public scrutiny and responsibility that would test her in ways very different from the challenges of military aviation. After careful consideration, Sarah accepted General Harrison's offer, understanding that this opportunity would allow her to serve her country in a broader capacity while continuing to pursue her passion for flying. The assignment would require her to share aspects of her personal story that she had previously kept private, but she recognized that her experiences could provide hope and inspiration to others facing similar challenges. The announcement of Sarah's new assignment generated significant media attention and public interest, as her story resonated with audiences who appreciated tales of perseverance and achievement against difficult odds. Her first public appearances were nervous affairs, as she had to learn new skills related to public speaking and media interaction while maintaining her demanding schedule of flight training and operational duties. However, Sarah's natural authenticity and genuine passion for military aviation made her an effective spokesperson who could connect with diverse audiences ranging from elementary school students to congressional committees. Her presentations always emphasized that her success was the result of hard work and the support of many people, rather than any special talent or privileges. She consistently credited her adoptive parents, military mentors, and squadron mates for providing the foundation that enabled her achievements. The impact of Sarah's public role extended far beyond recruiting objectives, as her story inspired broader conversations about opportunity, resilience, and the importance of supporting vulnerable children. Her visibility helped humanize the military for civilian audiences, while also demonstrating to military personnel that diverse backgrounds and experiences were valued and celebrated within the service. As Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from a foster home to national prominence as a military aviator and spokesperson, she understood that the scar she had once tried to hide had become the catalyst for opportunities she could never have imagined. The mark that had once represented her most painful memories had been transformed into a symbol of survival, strength, and the possibility of triumph over adversity. General Harrison's recognition of her scar and the story behind it had validated not just her individual achievements, but also the experiences of countless others who had faced similar challenges and emerged stronger. Sarah's new platform gave her the opportunity to advocate for foster children, military families, and anyone struggling to overcome difficult circumstances while pursuing their dreams. The scared little girl who had once watched planes from her foster home window had not only achieved her dream of flying those magnificent machines, but had also become a voice for others who dare to dream despite their circumstances. Her journey proved that with determination, hard work, and the support of caring people, even the most challenging beginnings could lead to extraordinary destinations. The scar that had nearly broken her spirit as a child had ultimately become the mark that set her free to soar higher than she had ever imagined possible.